Before we turn to Professor Shanil Bhagwat, I just want to explain how I came across Shanil's work, which is, I think, fascinating. So I'm increasingly fascinated by our interaction as a species with different ecosystems, different biomes around the world, and how our ancestors arrived in these different environments and figured out food systems, how they figured out how to survive and strategies for producing food, and also for most of our history as a species, remaining in balance with the environment. And I came across Shanil's work because I was looking into sacred groves in India, and this story of why is it that some communities in India were protecting patches of forest. Please look into Shanil's work on this because it's completely fascinating. I mean, we don't have time today, but what really struck me is that this intimate, deep connection that many humans still have with landscapes, with environments, and the interconnection between conservation and food production, and the realization that that is still such an important thing. So that's just a bit of background for your work, Shanil, which does... It is that interaction between food production and the environment, and I think you argue that if we embrace complexity, we can deliver on a better environment and produce food. Please explain.
Absolutely. I think that is 100% true, and I'm glad you brought up the topic of sacred forests, because this is a fantastic landscape in southwest India where I had a privilege to spend a year living. And interspersed with agriculture, farmland, agroforestry, there are these patches of forest which are protected as sacred. But what I'm going to focus on is that agroforestry bit of the landscape. And it's fascinating because it's as complex as a food production system can get. Take the example of specialty coffee, for example, that's grown in these agroforestry settings. So you have coffee plants growing on the forest floor. You have tall trees reaching up to 30 meters high, and that provides that ecosystem complexity. You have epiphytes growing on these trees. You have complex branching structure and birds nesting in these trees. You have orchids and all kinds of creatures that live in that very intricate ecosystem of just a tree. And in agroforestry systems, there are many of them over the coffee plants. If we imagine a sort of hectare of this agroforestry system, it just doesn't stop at coffee. There is also fruit trees, there are orchards, there are fish ponds, there are, for example, chicken sheds that coexist alongside coffee plantations. So there's a complex variety of food products that grow just out of 1 hectare of land. And compare that with the wheat field that we were sitting on the backdrop of earlier. And a hectare of wheat field will probably produce a few thousand loaves of bread. But what this agroforestry system does is that it produces much more alongside staple crops like rice fields or corn or wheat. So I think that ecosystem complexity and the biodiversity that these systems bring with them is something that I have been fascinated for many, many years.
And following on from what Godfrey was saying in the framing, better environment doesn't inevitably mean a trade-off with better production.
Yeah, that is a good point. So if we imagine these two contrasting landscapes, a hectare of wheat field on the one hand and a hectare of coffee agroforestry on the other, I'm not saying that it's either or. It's about the right balance. So a wheat field can produce us a few thousand loaves of bread that could feed a small village or a family, large family for a year. But the agroforestry system can connect this family into the international markets for specialty coffee. It can grow a wider variety of produce. It can also grow non-wood forest products such as mushrooms that can be for better nutrition, better health, and as well as a better environment. So I think it doesn't have to be a trade-off between production and environmental conservation. It can go hand in hand if there's a right balance of different landscapes in a farmland.
And we storytellers and many journalists who look at stories linked to the food system or food systems around the world, the dominant narrative is that we are destroyers of nature and we are such a negative influence on environments, ecosystems around the world. Should we be more positive, that humans can be positive actors in ecosystems and produce food?
Yes, I think there is always that scope and that space for human ingenuity. When in difficult times humans innovate, there's often very frugal innovation that you can come across in very rural settings. And that's not an innovation that in technological terms is very advanced, but it's something that works with the grain of the landscape or with the grain of the farmland where people are working, as opposed to erasing the wild biodiversity that lives on that farmland alongside crops.